about this, sir. In November 2005, he was the Ida Beam distributing visiting professor at the University of Iowa. He is also co-editor of the South African Geographical Journal from the Routledge. He was also consulting editor of the Journal of Immigration and Refugee Studies. He has served on editorial boards of Geoforum, Antipode, Indian Ocean Survey, African Geographical Review, Migration and Development, and South Asian Diaspora. His areas of specialization are segregation, local economic development, xenophobia, human rights, migration and diaspora, religion, philanthropy, and development. We indeed are very grateful to have you, sir, on board today. And I'm sure participants are going to learn lot from you, and they will having lots of takeaways from your inputs and suggestions on their papers. We welcome you on the board, sir.
Thank you, Ruchi. Very generous introduction. Okay. Let's proceed. I'm going to ask Ananya to start. I'm going to leave titles out, right? We have called by first names. Ananya, you're going to tell us something about yourself, and then you're going to go with your presentation.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, Ananya, go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I'm Ananya from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. I work as a researcher, and this topic comes, it's an extension of my PhD thesis that I submitted last year, where I looked at actually gender, labor, and migration within South Asia. Over here, what I try to address is what happened to the cross-border migrants during the pandemic in India. A lot has been said about where were the migrants within India, like all of us in India and even globally actually looked at some very powerful media images of what happened to the migrants who walked long miles home when they were trying to get back in the wake of the lockdown that was initiated in March, 24th of March, to curb the spread of coronavirus. However, there were few groups of migrants that still remain very obscure within this. And these were the Bangladeshi migrants in India and the Nepalese migrants in India, who did not gain media attention as much as the other groups of migrants within the country. To this presentation, what I try to do is I try to shed light using media documents. Since we have very limited time, I'm just going to quickly go across the big numbers. So we have about 3.1 million Bangladeshis in India and about 6 million Nepalese in India. Most of these are cross-border migrants, and even if the Nepalese are legally allowed to be in India, they still remain undocumented and enter and come into India because they are allowed to be in India via the Peace and Friendship Treaty of 1950 between India and Nepal, but they remain undocumented in nature. That is to say that there's no actual official count either with the Nepalese government or with the Indian government about how many Nepalese citizens are in India, living and working in India. The migration between Bangladesh and India is much more complex because this is a migration flow that is one of the largest flows within world. I think it's like it used to be the second largest migration corridor up till the 2000s globally. But a lot of this migration right now is caught up in a history of xenophobia and hatred and the questions of illegality. And it has also been mired with this very recent Citizenship Amendment Act that was passed by the Indian government. So I actually traced the roots of the pandemic, the roots of the crisis faced by the Bangladeshis and the Nepalese migrants, the cross-border migrants who live in India during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is actually more contentious and has a longer history through which they become distressed and lose their dignity at the workspace within India. For this, what I largely relied on, since I was not able to access the field, is I relied on news items published in newspapers, think tanks, some university websites, and blogs. I tried to make sure that I had an equitable distribution of media resources both from Nepal and Bangladesh, along with the Indian sources, because along with the COVID-19 pandemic, there was also a pandemic of fake news, and there was also a lot of populism and xenophobia going on around in the media. And so I actually tried to use these news articles to build up the case of what was happening with the migrants, the Nepalese migrants and the Bangladeshi migrants during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I draw textual analysis and draw case studies through these newspapers for the methodology of the paper. For the condition of Nepalese migrants in India, who, mind you, are legally allowed to be in India, there, it remains very contentious because, like I said, Nepal and India have a long history of migration between these two regions. Despite this long history, the Nepalese government does not recognize the migrants who come from Nepal to India as foreigners. Therefore, when the lockdown was initiated in Nepal and India both simultaneously, what we saw was while a lot of repatriation efforts were given in for the migrants coming in from Gulf and from Southeast Asia, the migrants from Nepal actually got stuck in the border. There are media stories that talk about Nepalese migrants being stuck for almost 40 days along the border. In the middle of this, also what happened was we suddenly had a geostrategic altercation between these two countries about a small plot of land and the maps getting distorted among the two countries, and that actually led to increased hostility. Uh, so I so I quickly trace what happened to the migrants in the middle of this, where on one hand during the pandemic, the informal sector work where most of the Nepalese migrants are located, actually they lost their jobs. And on the other hand, you had this geostrategic altercation between the two countries, which also led to further accentuation of their difficulties of the where the migrants could not actually return home as expected, along with other migrants. And that is what I would like to just draw your attention to this small case study, where I found this very interesting story about Halburam, who is a Nepalese migrant who works in Bhiwandi, Maharashtra. Bhiwandi is known as one of the most famous power loom sectors in the country. Uh, in What happened is the power loom sector was already facing uh, extensive shock due to extensive macroeconomic shocks due to the implementation of the goods and service tax, the GST demonetization way back in 2017, and then comes the COVID-19 pandemic. So people like Halburam, who earn barely 400 rupees a day, that is about, I think, $5, $4 to $5 a day, actually walked 1,500 kilometers from Bhiwandi in Maharashtra to Nepal, and then was stuck for almost another 40 days on the border, where neither India nor Nepal was allowed them to cross the border. This led to a cascading effect of a lot of other dimensions of their life getting compromised, and basic dignity and human vulnerability being accentuated. A similar case with the Bangladeshi migrants also reveals that where I talk about this individual called as Muhammad Saidul, who is a so-called illegal, or rather a person who has entered India through irregular means, who paid, that is to say, that who paid an agent a sum so that he could cross into India, and he worked as a garbage collector in Bangalore, was already apprehended way back in December. And throughout the lockdown period, what has happened is that Muhammad Saidul, his wife, and his two children still remain in police custody. Uh, for people who actually attempted from Bangladesh, for people who actually attempted to go back home, we see that there have been increased amount of border killings. Uh, in fact, between 2000 and in 2019, after a pact was drawn between the border security forces of India and Bangladesh, we see that the number of killings of people, so shoot at sight orders that the Indian government has implemented along the Indo-Bangladesh border, we see that 3 times more people have been killed during 2019. Uh, this has actually made, so you have this long history of people who are coming in, working in largely informal jobs that are not taken up by the local population. For example, Muhammad Saidul is a garbage collector, something that a lot of local people would not be doing, and he earns about 4,000 rupees a month. And these are the people whose lives got really distorted by the pandemic, instead of in a place where citizenship rights were the guarantee of social security, were the guarantee of governments taking up responsibility. Cross-border migrants in India get caught in a limbo. They are the ones who are. So here is a timeline, but I think I'm just going to skip over it. But what happens is these citizens or these non-citizens, so cross-border citizens who are irregular in nature, get caught in a limbo. Their social security conditions, their economic conditions, all of it actually goes for all of it actually gets hampered uh, during the crisis, and it actually got heightened because they are already very, very vulnerable populations, not accounted for either in their origin or in the destination. Uh, the geopolitical tensions between the countries also, in fact, added to the insecurity that these people felt. In other times, that is, in more peaceful times or more regular times, such migrants depend on what I would call as economic benevolence of their employers. So most of their social security conditions within the labor market comes from their employers. But in the during the COVID-19 pandemic, what happened was the pandemic heightened economic insecurity, and that led to further vulnerability, further marginalization. There were cases of wage theft, there were cases of sudden closure of units, suddenly employees were asked to go back, and that led to migrants seeking newer avenues, migrants uh, actually scrambling around to get, so cross-border migrants who could not go back, largely from Bangladesh, say, for example, scrambling for other sources of occupation to make their livelihoods. This also coincided with the rise of fake news, xenophobia, jingoistic and populistic reporting in the media that also added to the challenges. Just to give an example, when the altercations between Nepal and Bangladesh between Nepal and India started, Nepalese, there are reports that the Nepalese migrants actually got to know that if they do not come to Nepal within, say, a fixed duration of 15-20 days, their citizenships would get to stand cancelled. So such a fake news also heightened the tension, heightened the sense of insecurity among the migrants from Nepal who were in India. And they sought to further go back, and that led to a large number of them actually catching the coronavirus. This also led to, say, for example, the Nepalese Prime Minister actually calling the Indian Nepalese diaspora as the carriers of the coronavirus. So they became the virus carriers both in India and both in Nepal, which further actually led to loss of life, loss of dignity, loss of livelihood. I think I would like to stop here, and I'm happy to discuss more about this in the question and answer section.
Thank you, Ananya. I think a fascinating paper and presentation. The public media focus has been largely on people, walking to the villages, millions, and I'm not saying that's unimportant, but you're focusing on an area that's linked to cross-border and geopolitical implications of that, and it's happening in many parts of the world where migrants who are returning came under pressure because they were seen to be carriers of the disease as well. I'll definitely encourage you to publish the paper. I can tell you any reputable journal will take it. Hopefully we'll come back to you if there are time for questions. We're now moving on to the next presentation, which is also looking at geopolitics in some ways. Dr. Olga was looking at Chinese migration in Russia and COVID-19.
Hello. My theme is Chinese migration in Russia and COVID, loss of patent function in Russian-Chinese relations. I live in Blagoveshchensk. It's a city on the Chinese border, Russian-Chinese border, in the Russian forest. And my city and Chinese city are only separated by 700 meters of the Amur River, and it usually takes 15 minutes to reach the opposite bank and to reach another country. So our territories are so close. This problem of Chinese migration to our territories now under the COVID, the situation is very difficult for us. So I want to start with that Russian-Chinese relations have been around for 400 years, and nowadays contacts between Russia and China are characterized by an unprecedented high level of political trust and trust-based cooperation in relevant areas. But as for Russian-Chinese interaction on the Russian Far East, this historical process got its development in the second half of the 19th century, and the Chinese migration flow, which began in the 19th century, has become an integral part of the Far Eastern region's social economic life and an element of the Russian Far Eastern society. And nowadays, at the beginning of the 20th century, Chinese migrants, their economic activity and the peculiarities of interaction with the Russian population have a direct impact on the further development of Russian-Chinese cooperation at all levels. Thus, the purpose of our study is to consider how the COVID coronavirus pandemic affected Chinese migration to Russia. And I start with the problem that all adopted programs and plans for the development of Pacific Russia were recognized as unrealized or not fully implemented. And judging by the terms of living conditions, this region, Pacific Russia, is increasingly lagging behind both the Central Russia and the neighboring territories of Japan, South Korea, and China. And the region loses about 20,000 people of the permanent population per year since 1991. So the new national program for the development of the Far East until 2035, adopted at the end of September this year, also does not contain specific ideas and solutions to overcome the periphery of border territories. And at the same time, the Chinese government has been making efforts to reduce the periphery of the border north in eastern territories. Nowadays, more than 1,000 projects are being implemented in the processing and trade zones with Russia, located in Harbin, Mudanjian, Suifenhe, Danin, including about 1,700 enterprises for processing various types of resources. However, in the Russian Federation, there is no strategy that considers the Russian border territories as a region open to developing countries. The Russian authorities limit themselves to targeted measures, pinning their hopes on large-scale foreign and primary Chinese investments. But meanwhile, China has never been a major investor in Russia and has not become one even as Western investor has fallen. At the same time, China is the second country in the world in terms of outbound investment. In 2019, China has invested $130 billion in other countries. Meanwhile, Russia not only got nothing from this pie, but investors from China even withdrew almost $1 billion from Russia. Chinese investors emphasize the uncertainty of Russian legislation and the permanent probability of banning a business project at any stage. According to Chinese experts, the degree of investment risk in Russia has now increased and reached an average level. Chinese experts note the continuing policy of caution for the Russian authorities regarding Chinese business projects, the lack of transparency of the investor selection process, and the high corruption of Russian officials, the use of grazing, etc. In total, from 2015, Chinese businesses have invested less than $300 million in 45 projects implemented with the participation of investors from China. Chinese business is not attracted to the construction of industrial enterprises in the Russian Far East, but only to the extraction and primary processing of raw materials. Despite the proclamation of favorable business regimes, Chinese investors are deterred by systematic problems: a small local market, the limited economic power of the region, and a small population, and the lack of transport infrastructure. So the closure of the border because of coronavirus becomes a situation much more serious. On January 20 this year, our Prime Minister signed an order to close the Russian border to prevent the spread of a new type of coronavirus. So the border between Russia and China in the Far East was closed on February 1, and till nowadays it's closed. In general, according to experts, the economic consequences of the crisis because of the coronavirus, including due to the reduction of economic and humanitarian primary tourist contacts between Russia and China, will be much more severe for the Russian border area. The region's economy will suffer even more from the recessions of the Russian economy caused by falling oil prices and the need to relocate available resources to maintain social stability in the more populated European part of the country. In the Far East, the hotel, restaurant, tourist businesses will suffer the most. And for the economy of the region as a whole, the most serious problem will be the termination of access to the market of Chinese labor. Already in 2020-2021, this is likely to lead to the bankruptcy and withdrawal from the market of a large number of Chinese companies working in agriculture and construction. Closing borders and suspending humanitarian and tourist cross-border contacts would slow the ongoing development of a number of integration processes. In particular, it will set back the negotiation process on visa liberalization, reduce the Russian community in China and the Chinese community in Russia, and new social realities. The rise of xenophobia, stringent administrative modes, they question the prospects for their rapid recovery. So the problem of preserving or not preserving the function of Chinese migration pattern in Chinese-Russian relations is determined by two factors. The direct closure of borders and the ban of entry of Chinese citizens to Russia, as well as the periphery of Russians and Chinese territories in the Far East. The periphery of the Russia-Eastern border region will accompany factors, weak ties with the center, and develop mechanisms of economic interaction, and pressure over the authorities to liberalize foreign economic activity, conservatives and of the official apparatus, etc., led to the fact that the principles and norms that contribute to the strengthening of globalization have not been spread here. And the creation of social economic zones, developed social economic zones in the Far East that began in 2015 did not arouse much interest among Chinese investors. The Chinese leadership is making significant efforts to overcome the periphery of the northeastern provinces, and taking into account geopolitical factors, it's interested in cooperation with Russia. But it's unlikely that this interaction will reach the level of high-tech production in the near future, and the development of economic and invested areas lags behind the political and military levels of partnership between Russia and China. The closure of borders due to the coronavirus pandemic was a factor that accelerated the obvious state of affairs and brought closer the reality of Chinese-Russian relations, in which there is no place for large-scale Chinese investment or large-scale use of Chinese labor in the Russian economy. Despite the high level of Russian-Chinese interstate relations, the mechanism of interregional trade and economic contacts remain unsettled. Chinese migration and Chinese investment as a unique form of cross-border cooperation could become a trend of mutually beneficial Russian-Chinese cooperation. But for decades, the vectors and directions have not changed and practically do not develop, which increasingly reduces the interest of Chinese citizens in doing business with Russia. Despite the strategic partnership, Chinese migration is losing its role as a pattern in the system of Chinese-Russian relations. And the cardinal term in this is possibly only if the Russian government adopts an effective program for the development of the Russian Far East and implements effective measures to overcome its periphery. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Olga. Another very interesting paper, also having geopolitics as an important theme and looking at the implications of lockdown, the restrictions of movement, implications for investments and interregional trade and economic stability. Thank you, Olga, and for also keeping to time. Hopefully we'll have a few minutes to take questions at the end of the session. We're moving now to the third presentation, and I see Dr. Barua is in, I can see her, and she's looking at the Bangladeshi diaspora and foreign policy and development implications. Over to you, Dr. Barua. You have to unmute, Dr. Barua. We can't hear you. You must unmute.
Sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I was saying that is it okay if I keep my video off because my internet is very slow? So if I keep the video off, maybe it will be a little faster.
It's perfectly fine. You can go ahead. It's perfectly fine.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I would like to start by thanking GRFD for this conference, which is finally taking place. And there's a slight change in the title. There has been some miscommunication. The title of my presentation is Engaging Bangladeshi Diaspora for National Sustainable Development. And as the title suggests, I will be highlighting primarily on the diasporic representation of Bangladeshi-born people in various countries and their contribution in their home countries that has helped Bangladesh to improve their economic and social status, what we have today. And Bangladesh has graduated from being a least developed country to the middle income category. It's a lower middle income country now. Bangladesh has made remarkable progress in reducing poverty, maintaining sustained economic growth, improved technologically, infrastructurally, and also in terms of education. The World Bank has supported Bangladesh since 1972 by providing more than $30 billion support, but to a great extent, the diaspora community that is spread out in different parts of the world have played a crucial role to bring up the status of Bangladesh to where it is today. As highly mobilized communities holding the consciousness of their identity, diaspora have the ability to be a part in the domestic and the international socioeconomic and political matters. Diasporas are disseminated national groups that reside in different countries. They're primarily non-state actors who intermingle with the state actors present in the host countries and the country of their origin. And for Bangladesh, their diasporas have been playing a crucial role in the growth of the country and to fulfill their aspirations of sustainable development. In the last 48 years, the fact that millions of people have moved out of Bangladesh to various countries is known to all. Bangladeshi immigrants are distributed across the globe from the UK, in the West, and the United States to various Asian nations. Socioeconomic and political forces often push people out of one's country, and the same reasons again pull them to another country, and the similar factors are suitable in the Bangladeshi context. And a sizable number of people migrate out of the country every year as long-term migrants. The biggest problem is to find a precise statistical record of the number of those migrants and the countries of residence due to lack of data management and statistical management. However, there are around 7.5 million Bangladeshis around the world, placing the country sixth among top 20 of origin for international migration. And this is according to the World Migration Report of 2020, generated by the International Organization of Migration, IOM. And as for the available records, it is understood that the most favored destinations are the US and the UK and some European countries where they prefer to settle down. It is estimated by organizations like IOM and also the Bureau of Manpower, Employment and Training that approximately 1 billion people of Bangladeshi origin were residing abroad permanently, either as residents, citizens, or by holding other forms of bona fide documents in up to 162 countries. And around 700,000 people migrated out to find work, mostly to the Middle East countries, as recently as 2018. So, as the study shows, although Bangladeshis are found in many countries all over the world, as I mentioned before, they have a general tendency and inclination to permanently move to the UK, especially Britain and European nations, and also United States. And it is very apparent when we look at the numbers of the diaspora population. For instance, the United Kingdom has significantly a large number of population of Bengalis from Bangladesh that have settled down for several generations now. And they are ideally the colonial diaspora. The southern European nations like Portugal gained popularity in the last decade, and a large number is found in Italy, Spain, Rome, etc. There is an estimated 277,000 Bangladeshi immigrants that are living in the United States of America with their children. They're the first and second generations now. So they comprise a minor share of total foreign-born population in the states, that is about 0.5%. So if you see by the sense of percentage, it may look very negligible. However, in numbers, it looks a lot more. And a large number of these Bangladeshi demography belongs to an earning group of 84% in the state. So there, the Bangladeshis are placed in a better position than many of the general population, as in they are better educated, more likely to opt for advanced degrees, they have higher household income, etc. Now, when we look towards the Gulf countries, there are roughly around 1 million Bangladeshi diaspora there who are mostly working as laborers. And more recently, business and entrepreneurial migrants have been seen in the urban landscape of some of the East and Southeast Asian countries like Japan, Singapore, Malaysia. For example, 73,000 Bangladeshis entered Japan in between 1990 to 2000. And in 2011, there were most likely 100,000 or more Bangladeshis in Singapore. So I'll not go into much details of the numbers as per the countries, but if I have to sum up, it does show that the Bangladeshi diaspora, they are spread out in many countries in the world, and they have played a significant role in the upliftment of the condition of their home country. For instance, they have built diverse space in societies, open scopes for global trade and commerce. They've engaged in investments, innovative skills. They have contributed by sending remittances, transfer of knowledge and technology, and also played philanthropic roles, political roles, and also became sourcing points for many. So these manifold contributions have aided the country to uplift the socioeconomic status over the last several decades. There may not be an uniformity in the status, capacity, and the intensity of involvement among the diaspora based in different countries, yet there is generally some level of association that has implications on Bangladesh as a whole. Again, for example, I would like to say that many Bangladeshis who are residing in the UK are now in the third or fourth generation. They are established as respectable citizens. They're keenly involved in the mainstream British political and the economic system. Hence, they're major actors in the host country. Similarly, those residing in the US have also achieved accomplishments and they're playing contributing role in different fields in that society. The diaspora spread over Malaysia and the Gulf nations are mostly known for their labor strength, who are to a great extent associated to Bangladesh's thriving remittance inflow. Considering the data of 2011 and 12, around 19% of the total remittance of that fiscal year was sent from the US and the UK alone. The remittance in 2012 added to about $14 billion. and it constituted 12% of the country's 116 billion GDP, $116 billion GDP. The US is the seventh most frequently preferred country for the Bangladesh-born immigrants, and the fifth largest source of remittance for Bangladesh. So about 15 to 16 billion dollars of remittance come to the country per year, and this is a major strength for us because thanks to the remittance, we always have a foreign currency reserve of up to 6 to 8 months. And if there's a reserve of 6 to 8 months, then sudden shocks can be dealt with. Many diaspora members involve themselves with benevolent enterprises by establishing charitable funds, such as there's something called the Diaspora Gives Bangladesh. It's a charitable fund that functions as a fund to reduce the obstacles that diaspora communities face while involving in judicious investments in their own origin country. The contributions are used in programs related to healthcare, poverty alleviation, environmental projects, quality education, science, infrastructure and innovation to boost economy, and many other ways. If I talk about the knowledge and technology transfer, there are many instances. Like we have a Bangladeshi-born US citizen. He's a science professor at George Mason University. He used his scientific knowledge and expertise to conceive a solution to combat the plight arising from arsenic contamination in the eastern zone of Bangladesh and India. It's called the sonofilter, SONO, sonofilter. Then there's another professor. He's a founder director of Legatum Center at the MIT. He returned from the United States to Bangladesh. He collaborated with the Norwegian telecom company, Telenor, and set up a company called Gonophone Development Corp, which created the Grameen phone, which is the leading telephone operator of Bangladesh today. And it really matters because this takes us a step closer to our Prime Minister's aspirations to make Bangladesh a digital country. It's called Digital Bangladesh. So I would just like to conclude here with these views that, my views that individually these involvements may look very small or insignificant from a layman perspective, but it has very significant implications for the growth and development of Bangladesh when we see it from a broader perspective. The Bangladeshi community abroad have engaged themselves with the country in various capacities to bring the economic, to bring up the economy, to give it a boost, and also to bring about societal development. A sizable number of them reside in New York and London. However, I believe that the representation is not as visible as the Indian diaspora, but the expatriate Bangladeshis have gained success in certain areas of academics and engineering, IT, in science. So these scholars and experts in science and technology are an asset for the host country as well as the home country. They have given optimism and assurance to Bangladesh to be able to bring about sustainable development. Various projects serve as great examples. There are many other projects. I have highlighted only a few, and these various projects serve as great examples that show that they're keen to share the knowledge and expertise in favor of Bangladesh's sustainable growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barua. Once again, a very interesting presentation. You highlighted two streams of migration, the skilled migration largely to the Western countries, and you have the labor migration to the Gulf states, and the impacts of remittances on development in Bangladesh, some of the philanthropy activities, and some of the also, I think, I'm sure if you have time, the political influence that some of these individuals and families can, impacts that they have. A similar pattern is found in many African states. We're moving on to the next presentation. I'm not sure, is Hiba Mohammed and Amira, are they in? Ruchi, can you help me on this one?
Hello, everyone. Yes, we are here, definitely.
Oh, Hiba, okay. So
I will be
you go for it.
presenting.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Yeah, exactly. So I'd like to thank everyone for their time and dedication for allowing us to present our papers, and especially also I'd like to thank Mr. Rakesh for always being the main contact for answering all our concerns and everything related to this conference. So if you will allow
আমি একটা কাজ করতেছি ফটিক ওখানে গিয়ে মিয়াও মিয়াও করতে করতে আমি শুনি নাই
Dr. Hoymonti, can you please mute yourself?
আমারটা শেষ অন্য মেয়েরা দিতেছে অন্যরা বলছে
Dr. Barua,
হ্যাঁ
can you
যান
please mute
অসুবিধা নাই
yourself?
কোনো সমস্যা নেই আমি তো ওই পাশে বসছি দেখা যাবে না তো
Dr. Hoymonti?
Okay. Is it okay now? Can I just continue?
Yeah.
Yes, continue.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Thank
go
you so
ahead.
much.
And colleagues, please mute. We can't interrupt the presenter and speaker.
Okay, so if you will may allow me to just present my screen, because I need just to show you our presentation. Just let me know once you see my screen. Okay.
You can share now.
Okay, perfect. Just let me present it now. Oh, 1 sec. Okay, here we go. Okay, so our topic is about how COVID-19 pandemic affected refugees and migrants from MENA region in Europe, a factor analysis based on an online survey. So I've been doing this paper with two of my colleagues. We are PhD students. Me and Amira, we are in the faculty Bucharest University of Economic Studies in Bucharest, in Romania. And our colleague Ali is based in Iraq, and he was a former employee, former PhD student in the same faculty. And he's helping us also in this paper. So to just present the main points of our paper, as you can know, the current COVID-19 pandemic has impacted many countries in the world, and countries like affected many people also during the health, due to the health and employment, and also the other important factors like everyone, like as you can know, China was the first nation to witness a lot of changes and people infected, and it begins to take serious measures. Also, it spread and now it reached to Europe. So this paper has to show how COVID-19 affected the migrants and refugees coming from MENA region from different perspectives, such as employment, income, and health status. As the result will be taken from a quantitative analysis, we conducted an online survey. And of course, it was conducted in the last few months, and the result will be developed and tested by using factor analysis model. So the methodology, as I've been saying, we conducted an online survey, and it was distributed in 2 languages, Arabic and English. The questionnaire was developed and considered to be the most appropriate tool in this period, because as you can see, everyone is stuck in their house, and no one is able to meet face to face. So it was the easiest and quickest way to obtain responses. Then the distribution period was between 10th of May until 14th of September. We were able to collect 448 answers, in which they have been taken and developed to get more accurate results to contribute with the new results in the subject. We used, as I said, the factor analysis model to get more accurate results. And of course, we wanted to understand what are the effects of what are the effects of this research, and we decreased our factors to the most important group factors, and the results obtained from this study will be presented and will be shown in the next slides. I will let my colleague Ali just to present you quickly about the results that we got.
Hello, all of you.
Nice to meet you today in this conference. In this table, we're using Kaiser-Meyer oxen. We tested the sophistication to sample size. We find that the value 0.673. That's not indicated more than 15. That's good. That's mean the sample size is good. Also, Patriot test 767 and also KOM test. You can see here our sample that is closer to 1 to 1. That's good. That's good size sample size. Also significant. Next next table, the eigenvalue. We found in this table 18 compounded. The good one greater than 1 is the 5 compounded. Also we show the 58 communicated. That means the factor analysis can explore for sample study 85%. Next table, we find 5 compounded affected the phenomenon under the study. In first compound, XLX12, you find in 1787. Also, X13, X11, X14. All that more than absolute 0.35. In second compound, you found X10, X9, X15, also greater than 0.35 absolute. In third compound, we find only 2, that's X3 and X1. On the fourth, we found X4 and X6. And the last one, compound 5, we find X2 and X5. All these factors, the directive affected for phenomenon under the study. Complete, Heather.
Okay, thank you so much, Ali. Just to conclude and our paper, after using the factor analysis model, we had 13 variables. We wanted to check which ones is relatively correlated to COVID-19. Therefore, we reached to 5 main factors that impacted our research, which were the following. The first factor, we had 4 variables related to COVID-19 pandemic. The second factors had also 3 variables related to health insurance, measurement of public authorities regarding the spread of the virus. The third factor had also 2 variables that covered part of the portfolio questions, which are related to gender, age, and nationality. The fourth factor had 2 variables related to the economic status, while the fifth factor had 2 variables that are being related to other parts of portfolio questions. Thank you so much for listening, and if you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Hiba and your team. A very different presentation using quantitative analysis and especially factor analysis in looking at the impacts of the pandemic on refugees and migrants. We'll also come back to the question section. The next presentation is by Sushmita Bhattacharjee. I got it right now. Sushmita, are you in? Ruchi, she was not in, I think. Huh?
She was not there, sir. Sushmita, are you there? Else we can proceed with another presenter.
Okay, we then have Neha Rai. Miss Neha Rai.
Neha.
She's not here, right?
She's there, sir.
Oh, Neha is in. Okay. Neha, you may proceed with your presentation looking at...
Sir, I'm audible?
Yes, you are audible as well. And you're looking at a gender lens, which is interesting.
I'd like to express my gratitude. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Due to the low connectivity, first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Jared and Pakis, who provided me opportunity to present my views during the social crisis. My topic is women migrant worker along with the gender issues which is emerging during pandemic of COVID-19. My article is started with the argument that COVID-19 is not anyone the same. How migrant worker working on along with their children street vendor construction scarcity. According 37.4% of the total population in Nigeria, which is 3.7 million female migrant and 1.09 is a male migrant, which is 2019 and census 2001 revealed migrant female reported marriage is the primary reason for the migration, while in 2011 census 52% women involved in the migration due to the marriage purpose. Which means rest of the female informed their reason for the marriage is the economic and other activities. This data reveals that how the female speed up the Indian economy as well as the contributing female. But it has been always observed that the female migration is always considered a seasonal migration due to the village exogamy and extra. Their economic contribution is disguised under the patriarchal ideology, in which the definition of work considered only military actions. Though the materials raised question on the method of data collection of various institutions, so it is felt that the women faced multiple setup gender identity and these ideologies and mentality clearly visible in this pandemic. Therefore, the UN president is called this period of pandemic is shadow pandemic. There is an especially migrants women who are engaged in the unorganized sector. Along with it, the paper also emphasizes on the some other gender issues which is emerging during the pandemic. Now, this understood in the theory of social exclusion, in which Sen discuss two types of exclusion, that is active and passive exclusion. Active exclusion is when a government intentionally create a person or community separate from this. Of previous policies, it is considered as passive exclusion. In both cases, cannot be free from responsibilities. The migrant labor from the city, the government has to take responsibility for the migrant labor policies of the part of the which talks about the what kind of gender issues emerging during the COVID-19. In this sequence, the first issue is gender violence. According to the studies of both and of Zuger and Coates, when said that when families is spending more time together, violence ratio increases automatically without any reason. And that is and Coates suggested that may lead in the same way, COVID restricted human mobility due to the fear of infection, which turned into the loss of job and income. Countries like Argentina, Canada, France, and other reported domestic violence during the crisis and heightened demand of the urgency. Because chairperson of the National Commission for Women said that violence against women increases in the first phase of lockdown, such as domestic and sexual violence by intimate partners. Based on the COVID-19 by the social crisis during pandemic led the domestic violence against women. This period of pandemic took the women rights and their dignity. Another is the regarding to the gender, that is the increasing work burden. Closing of school and office is the burden of work, which is mostly carried by women. More the managed system. Survey by use Upseat consulting service based on found in 7% by the from home. It is found that 95% of people experience when the office shifted to home.
Yeah, it seems like we lost Miss Roy.
Sorry.
Neha, we've lost you. Ruchi,
Yes,
I think
sir.
we should proceed. If we could hardly follow you, Neha, that's the problem. You're continuously breaking up. It's difficult to follow.
Yes, second category is the just I have talked about the increase.
I'm giving you, Neha, I'm giving you 1 minute to conclude. Can you go there, please, quickly?
Yes, sir.
Can you conclude? Because we can hardly follow you. I'm giving you a minute to conclude.
Another is the economic crisis. And another one, this article is basically focused on the domestic worker during lockdown. As we know that the 90% are engaged in sectors. Among these, the domestic work is one of the marginal group, as due to the lockdown, industries are closed where they were deducted from their work. And as we know that the period of lockdown, most female migrants was engaged in domestic work were unable to collect their money due to the restriction of travel while they worked for the whole March, and reducing domestic service among household that the ideology of untouchability, as it is assumed that these workers came from the slum and ghettos, which can easily transfer infection, while COVID-19 demanding more cleanliness and sanitation, which is not possible for the poorers. Though the period of lockdown provided ground to the people that they realized the importance to domestic workers, but still the mindset of people was not changed. Unlock 4.0, when these workers re-enter in the workforce, they were considered as the carrier of infection. While it is well known that virus brought in the country by the international travelers, it is a reflection of stereotypical Brahmanical ideology in which the poor are considered as untouchable and dirty. Thus, we can say that the caste, class, gender identity shape pandemic experiences in a different form. These migrant women also not found any job at origin due to the stigma of migrants who are considered as the carrier of disease. As Subhadra Channa said that there are multiple ways to understanding the society through the positionality and situation. In the same way, during pandemic, if we analyze society through the migrant women positionality and situation, it is found that these migrants women are become the more sufferer due to their caregiving job. Women are always suffering in their normal life by the comprising the situations of pandemic affect them in a multiple ways for being a women migrant.
Okay, thank you.
Of COVID career forced them.
I think you have to conclude. Thank you. I think we got the gist. It's very difficult to follow. You've been highlighting gender challenges with the migration during the pandemic, and you refer to class, caste, and gender identities. Thanks a lot. It's a pity that you were continuously breaking up. We're now moving on to the next presentation. That's Ms. Zeba. Is she in?
Yes, sir. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please proceed.
Yeah.
You are looking at neoliberal dilemmas and COVID-19.
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. This is Zeba. I'm from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And the title of my paper is Neoliberal Dilemmas of Development, COVID-19 and Socioeconomic Concerns of the Migrant Labor. This paper, through its analysis of the theoretical assumptions of neoliberalism and dilemmas associated with it, seeks to reflect on the socio-economic challenges of the vulnerable sections, specifically the migrant laborers. It underlines that owing to the various contradictions within the neoliberal framework, the possibility and scope of ensuring justice for the poor seems to draw a gloomy picture. This paper raises the question that whether in the liberal democracies of today, there is a possibility of reconciling aspects of neoliberalism with emphasis on economic growth, market logic, and overwhelming role of the individual, and aspects of democracy in creating an egalitarian, sustainable, and inclusive public sphere with a welfare role of the state. My paper is divided into 3 sections. So the first section talks about the fundamental ideological assumption. Hello? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, please continue. We can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, so my first section talks about the fundamental ideological assumptions of neoliberalism, where it is seen as an ideology based on individualism, giving prime consideration to the individual as a category of defining the society, with individual being a rational decision maker with predominance of reason. As David Harvey also states that neoliberalism is a theory of political economic practices that proposes that human well-being can best be advanced by liberating individual entrepreneurial freedoms and skills within an institutional framework characterized by strong private property rights, free markets, and free trade. Maximization of profit by seeking one's own self interest is perceived as legitimate in the neoliberal framework, as it would eventually be beneficial for the society as a whole in terms of market exchange. Joseph Stiglitz states that neoliberalism is based on the fundamental notion that markets serve the public interest adequately as they are self correcting and allocate resources in an efficient manner. The utilitarian logic within the neoliberal ideology also seeks to maximize the autonomy of the individual over their own life in order to maximize their happiness. Therefore, the market in the neoliberal regime is considered a domain of maximization of individual profits and gains and minimization of losses. Social Darwinism also predominates the ideas of neoliberalism, with competition and struggle being the prime presuppositions underlining the pertinence of struggle for existence by individuals. This implies that neoliberalism favors liberty and freedom of the individual over upholding the idea of equality and social welfare for the vulnerable. Competition, as defining human relations, is considered economically viable, contributing to efficiency of the economic system. Now, neoliberalism as an economic framework also contributes to influencing the nature of the liberal state, which forms the political framework of neoliberalism in the form of liberal democracies, which also manifest certain characteristics that work in cognizance with the economic framework. It perceives the liberal state as an important stakeholder in the maintenance of market order, where the state is prohibited to intervene in exchange and production process, however, regulates any mechanism that inhibit competition in the market. As asserted by Prabhat Patnaik, the nature of the state has been transformed from being an institution standing above society and intervening in the economic realm for socio-economic interests to being a neoliberal state promoting and advocating the interests of the finance capital. This change has been demonstrated in the role of the state from being a producer and investor to facilitating privatization and disinvestment. Now, looking into the dilemmas of the neoliberal project of development, it can be said that it has led to elimination of the idea of social community by destroying institutions of solidarity manifesting in exploitation of labor. While upholding the category of individual and his freedom and choice, the neoliberalism has delegitimized any form of collective action. And as a result, what has happened is that there is a disjunction between the economic logic of development that promotes economic growth and efficiency via competition and the social logic of development which seeks inclusivity and a sense of justice in the public domain. The upholding of the principle of competition and social Darwinism of the right of the stronger has produced social violence through structural inequalities, more elitism, and contractual labor. It has also contributed to inequality of income and wealth and privatization of public services. In defining the role of the state, it can also be seen that it has subordinated the role of the nation to requirements of global transnational actors. Uh, it can also be seen that neoliberal ideology has attempted to compartmentalize the various realms of human society while separating the social and the economic and envisioning the individual and human nature to being homo economicus, that is, one dimensional man. This means that the social realm of the individual is subdued to the forces of free market and its uncontrolled hegemony. John Gray has also reflected on neoliberalism as a political project where there is no harmony but contradiction between social democracy and global free markets in the contemporary world, namely that democracy and markets are competitors rather than as partners. Reflecting on the moral depravity of the neoliberal framework, it can also be said that it socializes the losses incurred while privatizing the profits, which has contributed to a society overwhelmed with attributes of materialism and market fundamentalism and erasing any sense of solidarity in the form of a community. As Professor Thakur also states, that the present form of neoliberalism is devoid of any sense of people's well being and human value, with a prime motive and aspiration for absolute individual freedom. The crisis of neoliberal development can further be seen in developing world, specifically talking about the Indian context, with the popularization of the traditional security paradigm and increasing funds for armament, while spiraling down the funds for social welfare schemes evident in education and the health sector. Now, correlating the project of neoliberalism with the socio-economic crisis of the migrant labor, it can be said that, as stated by Jean Dress, India's development story has been about two Indias, defined by increasing unequal distribution of income. While a visibly opulent consuming class represented the success story, stagnation of real wages and absence of basic services was the reality for a large impoverished population. The outbreak of the COVID pandemic and emergence of the socio-economic crisis confronted by the migrant labor further reflects on this development story. It raises the question that whether the neoliberal framework of development, which espouses self-interest, profit maximization, and individualism, serves the idea of social justice in terms of representing the concerns of the vulnerable sections of society. The failure of the state in addressing the concerns of the migrant labor by providing them necessary relief and rehabilitation can also be recorded in the lack of substantive data regarding internal migration in the country. A recent survey of labor force illustrates that more than 70% of the workers in the non-agricultural industries have no written job contracts. Nearly half of these workers are not eligible for benefiting from the social security schemes. Besides, the daily wage workers are also put under a further precarious situation due to no or limited access to social security measures. Um, the dismal state of affairs of this marginalized section and the state intervention for ameliorating their condition is also explicated in the data, which demonstrates that Indian government spending on public social protection, excluding health, is just 1.3% of the GDP. And even though the government announced a relief package for the poor affected by COVID-19 in terms of cash and kind transfers, however, it amounted to just 0.2% of India's GDP. As Jean Dress also states that Indian economy does not provide for any mechanism in anticipation of a shock, which was well manifested in the state decision prior to the imposition of the lockdown, where there was no mechanism of ensuring a comprehensive and holistic social protection package for 90% workforce in the informal sector to prepare them to absorb the shock caused by the pandemic. So the forced migration of labor imposed by the pandemic and the state political decisions reflect that there is a lack of public trust of these groups in the state institutions and its mechanisms of delivering the necessary social security for the migrant labor. As Godavardi asserts that neoliberal nature of development with dismal public investment in social security priorities also segregated the more vulnerable and insecure working class who have been alienated of the rule of law, as well as with inadequate or no access to regulatory institutions. As a consequence of the neoliberal economic failure to deliver public goods to the vulnerable and the common sense which is created in the inefficiency of the government and its minimal intervention in the economic sphere, the concerns of social justice for the vulnerable remain unaddressed and are further accentuated with the security apparatus of the state, where the security apparatus takes precedence over the social welfare mechanism. So, keeping this in purview, I'd like to conclude and say that the nature of state functioning must be accompanied with a politics of responsibility, redefining the relationship between the individual self and the state and the societal relationships. Besides, being the product of neoliberalism, that's uneven development and profit maximization resulting in further migration also needs to be taken into consideration. The onus of the state lies in facilitating and providing a sustainable growth model which is people centric and not growth centric alone, where sabka vikas is ensured along with sabka saath. And this transformation needs to be ensured in various realms of our political community, be it the social, political, or the economic, in order to drive growth and development, which is inclusive, cooperative, and not competitive alone, which is more sustainable and secures harmony and not hostility between various sections of the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zeba. A very interesting presentation. I'm sure you've got a lot more fieldwork to do, but you are using the lens of a critique of neoliberalism to understand the state response to the COVID-19 and the consequences for those who cannot help themselves. And these are the people who are marginalized, excluded, displaced. Thank you for that. And now we're going to the last, the best they say is left for the last. So we have Dr. Ruchi Verma and Prof. Garima Sharma, and they are talking about a very interesting issue, the post-COVID work environment for the Indians who used to work in the Gulf states. Over to you, Ruchi. Are you presenting?
No, sir. I have already presented. It's Dr. Ruchi is another person.
So this paper is already done?
No. I already presented, sir. This is another Ruchi.
Oh, it's another Ruchi. Oh,
yeah. Dr. Ruchi,
is Ruchi
are you there? Another Ruchi, are you there?
Oh.
I think she is not there, sir.
And Sharma, so they're not here. Oh, then we have about, according to my time, about 25 minutes for questions. Ruchi, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Roughly 25
so
minutes.
It's about 25 minutes. So we've done well for time. So let's take some questions to our presenters. And maybe when you ask a question, just indicate to whom, which paper or author you are addressing, and then we'll direct it. So let's take the first round of questions. While you're thinking about it, on the chat, our colleague, Dr. Rakesh Ranjan, has uploaded the attendance, certificate details. So you've got to fill that in, and I'm sure that's going to help you somewhere in your institution. Rakesh, I've done my homework, right? So questions, colleagues?
I just have a question related to the attendance form, if you don't mind, please. Should we put only the information of the correspondent and his faculty, or all of the attendance participants?
Attendance sheet is not for the presenters. It's clearly mentioned there. This is not for chair, session coordinator, and presenters.
Those who are attending, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Questions, colleagues? We've got some time. We had some. Is there someone who's going to summarize a rapporteur? There's no summary yet. Ruchi, are we aligned for that? No.
I have one rapporteur, sir.
So the rapporteur is going to do a summary. Is that correct?
No, sir. No.
No. Okay. Thank you, Rakesh. So, I mean, I can summarize it. There were, I think, 3 themes. The first one was on the geopolitics of migration and COVID. And we had the case of Bangladeshi migrants and migrants from Nepal and the challenges that they were experiencing in India and trying to get back home, and the prejudice, the notion that they are carriers of disease, similar to the exodus from the urban areas to the villages of India, where the villages were saying, listen, these people are bringing disease, they're going to contaminate us. I think there's an interesting lens to understand those types of prejudices driven by, socioeconomic and political forces internal to India and in Nepal and in Bangladesh. And then we had the paper on China and Russia, the type of engagement in terms of migration, but also how that's likely to impact on investment decisions and development in that border zone that Dr. Olga was speaking about. And then the issue of migration and remittances, especially in Africa and Asia and South America, the so-called global South, remittances is a very important source of income and also development opportunities. Sometimes you may find a remittance, someone who receives a remittance may go and buy some, consumer goods, or they may open a shop, or someone gets opportunity to go to high school or university. So there are ripple effects or multiplier effects of remittances, which was illustrated in the case of the Bangladeshi diaspora by Dr. Barua. And then we had a more qualitative analysis, unusual these days in the study of migration, by Hiba and a team looking at factor analysis in terms of how migrants move from, refugees move from the MENA region. And then there was a very interesting study by Sushmita, where she was looking at, Sushmita, she didn't present, right? Is that correct? I'm just looking at the title.
Not present.
Sorry, the migrant workers. Unfortunately, I think Neha Rai had a very interesting paper. It was just the communication problem, where she was looking at the challenges facing women migrants, and these were migrants were largely domestic workers and so on, doing menial tasks, and what happened to them. And she was using the lens of class, gender, and caste to make sense of that. And then the last one by Ms. Zebab, she's looking at using the neoliberal lens to understand the response of the state to the laborers, migrant laborers, and the failure of state support mechanisms to support to provide for those migrants. And I think we all saw those images of hundreds of thousands of villages, migrant workers walking back to villages. So that's basically a summary in lieu of questions that people might have had. I'm still giving you a chance to ask or clarify any questions. Most of you are young scholars. I would certainly encourage you to develop your papers into publication. And for the Indian scholars, you all know what the UGC wants from you. And this is an opportunity. Ananya is laughing. Go for it. I really think you'll have some very good work and make an impact in this very important field of migration. Then I want to just thank GFRDT for inviting me. They don't forget me. It was a pleasure to sit in and listen. I wish I could spend more time here. And I know in your parts of the world, most of you are heading for supper or something. So thank you. And thank you, Ruchi, for guiding me, and Rakesh for making sure that the Zoom works.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sparing your valuable timing and offering so much insights to the participants. It indeed was a pleasure listening to you. Looking forward to have more sessions and insightful sessions from you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Rakesh. And so I'm going to leave. Rakesh, you are controlling, right?
Not controlling, managing.
Managing, that's right. And I'm not sure if Prof. Chandrasekhar has already left. I was wanting to greet him, but I think he has left. Okay. Thank you all. Good evening. Cheers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So other rooms are going on, like some of the presentations are going on room 2, 3, 4, and all 5. So if you are interested, you can join other rooms.